engineering tells us that a software development should follow a good software development methodology or a software development model. A software development methodology or a model divides the software development in various distinct phases, and each phase is focused to achieve one main goal each. These phases form the software development life cycle, also abbreviated as SDLC. There are various SDLC models followed in the industry, and the most basic and the oldest form is the Waterfall Model, which forms the topic of this lecture. In this lecture, we will discuss the Waterfall Model, its advantages, disadvantages, and how choosing this model affects the testing process for a software or application. So let's start. The Waterfall Model was first SDLC model introduced to describe the software development. Waterfall Model is supposed to be first introduced in the late 1950s, and it grew to popularity in the 70s. The first formal description of the Waterfall Model is often credited to Winston Royce, but the term waterfall was introduced in a paper in 1976 by researchers Bell and Thayer. The Waterfall Model is also known as linear sequential model. What it means is, the development process is usually unidirectional and flows steadily downwards through the different phases of software development. This downward flowing concept of software development is what gives it the name of Waterfall Model. The Waterfall Model has its origins in the manufacturing and construction industries, where all tasks are done sequentially, one phase after the other. Like for example, to build a car, we create a concept of the car, design the car, build it, and then test it. Similarly, to build a house, you collect the requirements from customer, design a blueprint, and then build the house and so on. In the same way, the Waterfall Model also states that you build the software in a sequential manner, one phase after the other. Since the flow is sequential, this model is very simple to understand and easy to implement. What it means in terms of software development is that every phase will need to be completed before we go on to the next phase. That is, every phase needs to be reviewed and signed off. Only then we can proceed to next phase. This rule itself forms one of the weakest points about this model. We will discuss more on the pros and cons of this model later. But first, let us see the flow of this model in detail. The first step in Waterfall Model is requirement analysis. The requirements collected from customers are analyzed and a technical document is created as a baseline for creating the software. The requirements are classified as functional and non-functional requirements. The requirement analysis phase generates some documents like software requirement specifications. These documents are reviewed and signed off, after which the project moves into the system design phase. A design team will create a blueprint for the software using the requirements documents and create design documents like high-level design document and low-level design document. Again, all the artifacts are reviewed and signed off by a team of stakeholders and managers. Once the design phase is over, the project will then move into the implementation phase, where the developers convert the design into code. Developers will code modules which are then integrated into a complete software. The implementation phase will generate the developed software, a working application according to user requirements. At the end of implementation, the development team will review and sign off the product from their end and hand it over to a testing team. The testing team, as expected, will perform testing on the developed software to ensure that it conforms to the requirements. The verification and validation activities done by the test team will ensure the quality of the product. Once the test team is finished with testing, it will sign off the product. The product will now move to deployment phase, where a team of experts will deploy the product into real world without any hassles. After the deployment phase, the product will be in maintenance phase, where it is regularly updated and issues are patched by a team assigned to perform maintenance activities. Meanwhile, if any requirements change, then the project moves back to the requirement phase and again has to cascade down all the stages to maintenance stage. Similarly, if design changes or coding bugs pop up, then the project moves back to appropriate phases and cascades down again. So this is how the Waterfall Model of software development works. Now let's have a look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of Waterfall Model. The advantages are quite clear from our discussions till now. Waterfall Model is simple and easy to understand and use. It is easy to manage due to the rigidity of the model. Each phase has specific deliverables and a review process. The phases are processed and completed one by one. The phases do not overlap. Hence, there is no ambiguity during the development process. Waterfall model works well for smaller projects where requirements are very well understood. Some of the disadvantages are evident too. Since every phase is signed off once completed, it is very difficult to go back to any phase and change something that was done incorrectly in the beginning. The stakeholders have to wait until end of implementation to get a working software. Sometimes this might not go down well with anxiousness of stakeholders. There is a lot of risk and uncertainty attached to the projects because every phase has to be done perfectly, else fixing bugs can cause a lot of expenses. And finally, the waterfall development model is not suitable for long, complex and object-oriented projects where the requirements are not fixed. The last topic we will discuss in this lecture is the impact waterfall model has on testing. Firstly, we know that testing starts late in the SDLC. Now this is in contrast with one of the testing principles we discussed in the fundamental section, which stated that we should always try to start testing early. If we start testing late, the defects get detected late and fixing them becomes more time consuming and costly. So that's a huge disadvantage of waterfall model for testing activities. Also, waterfall model requires that every phase is done only once. So testing phase is done only once and all defects are expected to be caught here itself. This is good in some cases, but bad in most cases. Good because small projects with clear requirements can be tested easily. But big projects with unclear requirements might allow some defects to go undetected. So a single testing phase causes a big impact on the testing activities. Now let us quickly recap what we discussed. We discussed the origins of waterfall model and what are its characteristics. Then we saw the actual waterfall model flow and the deliverables produced by every phase. We discussed the advantages and disadvantages of the waterfall model and finally saw what impact the waterfall model has on testing activities.